Hey guys, welcome to How to Program in C++ Episode 1. Today we're gonna learn how to set up our IDE and compiler so we can start compiling programs, and we're gonna very quickly write out our first program. So hopefully we can get this done fairly quickly and concisely. Let's get started. First of all, open up your web browser of choice and find Google, or you can just go directly to the web address, which I'll tell you in a minute. Type in code blocks. Now, if you want to just go directly to the website, you can go to www.codeblocks.org. Now, you can use whichever compiler and IDE you want, but I'm telling you to use this one because it's easy, simple to set up, and we should have no problems if we're all using the same compiler, he says, hopefully. Cough, cough. Okay, so first things first, click on the Downloads tab at the top, click on Download Binary Release, and then the version that you want is the one with MingW, because MingW is the compiler. The compiler is actually a separate thing from an IDE, but we'll get into that in a minute. Just for now, make sure that you are clicking the download with MingW included. If you are using Linux or Mac, I'm sorry, but this first half of the video, setting up the compiler, does not apply to you. The rest of these lessons you can totally use, but this first setup video is probably not for you. You can look elsewhere for a setup video, or if you really want me to do one, I can do it for you. I can do a Linux one for sure anyway. Mac, not so easily, but I'm sure it's fairly self-explanatory. All you have to do is install the Mac version of CodeBlocks and configure it yourself, which shouldn't be too hard. Okay, I want you to download this, use probably the SourceForge version, and just wait for that to download. It will download, install the program, and I already have mine installed, so I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to walk you through the first few steps. But what will happen is some dialogues will pop up the first time you run up CodeBlocks. Just hit yes and confirm and all that stuff for everything, and you should be fine. If you can't get that far, if you have any problems, just shoot me a question in the comments or anything, and I'll sort that out for you. Anyway, once you've gotten all the initial dialogues and stuff out the way, you should be greeted with this screen, and what we want to do is make a new project. Now, you can do this by clicking on this and create a new project right here in the Startup tab. If you don't see that, then you can go to File, and you can go to New, and then Project. So, first thing that will pop up is this big selection of projects that you can make. Now, don't worry, this looks a bit intimidating, but you're actually probably only going to use one or two of these over the course of your programming with this IDE anyway. So we're going to go with console application. Make sure you select the right one. Some of them have the same icon, so make sure it says console application forward, and this is just a kind of click OK, and make sure C++ is selected. Click OK. Now you're going to want to find where you want to put your stuff. I'm going to go with a folder called Lesson 1 on my desktop. Make sure you can find this folder for later, just so that if you want to run the program separately, you can. Call the project title whatever you like. I'm going to call it Lesson 1. This might have a conflict because I already made something called Lesson 1. This screen should all be pre-set up for you, so you shouldn't have to do anything on this screen. If anything is different from mine, then maybe you might want to play around, but otherwise you should be fine. Okay, well, that made that without freaking out somehow. So, once you've made your new project, you should find on the left here that it has a kind of workspace tab. If this is not here, then you might have to play around with the windows. This is quite a feature-full IDE, so you might have to play around with the view and stuff. Find this, but this lists all the files in your project, and you should double click on the main.cpp, which should bring you to this. Now, this is actually what we're going to be writing today, but let's delete it for now so we can quickly write it out ourselves. Now, I'm really not going to explain much just now. I'm just going to give you a very brief overview, and then we'll go over this more in depth next time we take a look. So first things first, write a hash symbol, then the word include. Make sure include is right after the hash symbol. Sometimes spacing is irrelevant, sometimes, well, for most part spacing is irrelevant. So pointy bracket, open pointy bracket, and then IO stream. So the letters IO and then stream. Close pointy bracket. Now, if you can't see anything or you're struggling to stay along, make the video HD and pause it whenever you need are my tips for this. So, next thing, type using namespace std. And then make sure you put in the semicolon at the end of the line. Now, C+'s syntax dictates that you put a semicolon after every single statement. This line up here is a little bit different because it's kind of a message for the compiler rather than it tells the compiler to include a file rather than it's not a command that will run in your program. But again, we will go over this far more detail later on, compiler stuff. And this line here, this using namespace std, says I want to use the group of functions in this namespace called std. Now, you don't know what a namespace is yet, or you probably don't know. If you do know, then it's kind of weird that you're watching this tutorial, but still. It's a very quick summary. It's a group of classes and objects and variables and stuff all kept together in one group. But again, we'll go over that later. This just allows us to use the functions that are in this standard library that comes with C++, which we will need so we can use these IO functions that we have included. This line, to give you a little bit more depth, kind of copies this file into the project without you having to physically copy and paste code, I guess. So, next line, int main, open bracket, close bracket, and then curly brace bracket open, and it should put in a close one for you. Now, this is the entry point for your program. This is the first function that should be executed when your end program runs. It's the main entry point for your program. I think I've said that twice now. So whatever you put in here will be the first statements to be executed when your program runs up. We'll see this in more practical terms very soon. For now, again, the whole message of this is if you're not keeping up at the moment, then you will get it by the end of the next few lessons. So, the next thing I want you to type in is cout, and then 2 pointy brackets to the left, and then semicolon, and then you can type whatever you want between these 2 semicolons. I'm going to type in hello world because it's the most standard, boring thing that every single programmer seems to make at some point in their programming career. So it's a good starting point. And then at the end of this line, make sure there's a semicolon because this is a statement and every statement requires a semicolon at the end. Do not, however, put semicolons after these brackets or this int main open bracket, close bracket. Now, there's one more line that we should put in. Hit enter and type return 0 semicolon. Okay, let's go over the last 2 lines that we just wrote here very quickly again. cout is a function for outputting data to the console. So we stream in some data, which is hello world ! So that will basically print out to the console. The console being the command prompt, basically, in this situation. You can have many different types of consoles, but on Windows, the standard one is command prompt, and we will be outputting all our text and programs to that for the foreseeable future. We will be making full graphical games and things in different series, but for now, this is a very beginner series, and you need to learn these early things before you can jump in and make a game. Or you could try and jump in and make a game straight off the bat, but it's going to be very confusing. Anyway, last line of the program, return 0. This is something that's going to make much more sense later on once we go over functions in depth. But basically, we're returning the number 0 which says the program executed fine. Everything went well. 0 is kind of the error code. If we were to put -1, then that might mean that an error had occurred at some point in the program. It's a very loose description of that. We will definitely go over that in more depth later on, so don't worry. But that's what we're doing for now. Just saying, program executed fine, everything's good. So, from here, we are gonna compile our program. Now let's just go over a couple of theory-related things really quickly. An IDE, which is this code blocks window here, is something entirely separate from the compiler itself. Although the two programs integrate together and you just installed them both together, they are actually separate things. Now, you don't really need to know this, but I think it's a good bit of theory so you know when you're talking to people and things what you're talking about. So the IDE, or the Integrated Development Environment, is this kind of Windows. It's all the debug stuff, it's this text editor, it does all this syntax highlighting, that manages your projects over here and stuff, it does all that. Now the compiler is another program that you don't see, but what the compiler does is it turns all this C++ code into code that the machine can actually read. It's actual machine code, ones and zeros, that it can just zoom through really fast. That's what makes C++ so powerful, is it is compiled down to actual ones and zeros, so the computer can just be like ra-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta and gets through it like really fast. So let's compile our program. Let's learn how to do that. So you have three little icons up here, or rather you should if you're going from a default install of code blocks. One of them is build, one of them is run, and one of them is build and run. We want to build and run because we not only want to compile our program, which is the build, we also want it to run afterwards. Now you can run without compiling, but you might not have up-to-date code running. And you can compile without running, but that seems a little bit silly unless you're just checking that your code isn't messed up somewhere. So basically that would be compiling the program but not actually testing it, just seeing if any errors pop up. There's another way you can do this. You can go to the build menu over here and you can either click on build or you can click on run or build and run. What we want to do is build and run. So here we go. And there's our program, our very first program, Hello World. Fantastic. So, thanks for watching, guys. Next time we will go over in greater depth. We will do a full analysis of what's going on here, and we might even get to variables if we have time. I'm going to try and keep these episodes as short as possible. This will be one of the longer ones because it's the initial setup. I can imagine there will be long ones in the future, but that will be because we're covering very complex subjects. So, thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll stick around for the next few. Goodbye.